And we are back, folks, here on hashtag AskGSM for Wednesday, July 24th, 2019, episode 295. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hopefully you guys are doing well. This episode, much like last week, is being recorded on the Sunday of Extreme Rules. And if it sounds like a long time ago, it is. I'm still away in London as of this recording, as by the time this goes up. I will be back on Thursday, I think, July 25th. So this episode is being recorded ahead of time because I didn't know if I'd be able to record while I was away. And not only that too, but I also didn't want to go a week without doing a show. Because most people be like, oh, I'll be away, fuck it, I won't do it, or wait till I get back. I can't do that. I'm not that type of person. So I appreciate your guys' cooperation throughout this entire process. I gathered all these questions. So I gathered all the questions over the weekend of Extreme Rules on Saturday and Sunday. I answered half of them last week here on the show, and I'm answering the second half this week. So some of them might be like, oh, that shit already happened. Why are you talking about it now? Why would someone ask about that? It's because the question was sent in 10 days ago. So if it's outdated, I apologize. That's my fault. But that's what you do when you do tape shows. And I never do tape shows. But I had to make this one exception for this 1 week because of the length that I'll be away for. Usually I'm away for like no more than a few days. It's completely ridiculous. I'm away for 10 days. It's a family trip or whatever. That being said, all these questions were sent in, as I mentioned earlier, about a week and a half ago. If you want to send in questions for next week's show, the first fresh show, I guess you can call it, in a few weeks, next Wednesday, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And leave your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get started here with episode 295 of hashtag AskGSM. First question comes from at Fresic Brett, from Twitter. His question was, what wrestlers from New Japan Pro Wrestling would you like to see Jon Moxley wrestle? That's a good question. I don't watch too much of the New Japan product. I think I might have answered this before, somewhere else, or even maybe on this show. But Minoru Suzuki, I've heard, would be like a dream match. Suzuki versus Moxley, I've heard, would be like amazing. And I know Suzuki a little bit, so I could definitely see why that's a match a lot of people would want to see. And I want to see the match too. I think even Moxley has said before, I want Suzuki. I don't think Suzuki's in the G1, so it won't be happening as part of the G1. But hopefully at some point down the road, maybe even for that U.S. title that he currently holds, at least as of this recording. I mean, the obvious ones, Ibushi, I think he might be able to face, I don't know the current layout without looking at it, of the blocks in the G1 this year. He may have to face him at some point. I don't know if he will, or I'm not sure. Ibushi, Tanahashi, Okada are obviously all the go-to choices, because they're like the top 3 wrestlers, in my opinion, in New Japan right now. So Moxley versus Okada has to happen eventually, hopefully. Tanahashi, Ibushi, at least until AEW really gets started up in the fall. So again, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to have all those matches. I don't know if he's just wrestling the G1 or what's going on. So hopefully we can see more of Moxley in some of those matches. And even a Kenta match too. A Moxley-Kenta match could also be pretty good. Hopefully we could see some of those matches before he reports to AEW full-time in the fall. Mr. Marceau at RJ_Marceau, his question was, with all the avenues to watch wrestling online through the network subscriptions and YouTube, isn't it a great time to be a wrestling fan? I say that all the time. I completely agree. It is now, I don't know if it's the best time to be a wrestling fan. I would argue that it is. I mean, I wasn't, a fan 20 years ago, and the product may have been better for WWE overall, but there are now more companies than ever to watch. And yeah, there were territories back 40, 50, 60 years ago, but there was no one easy way to watch them all. I mean, obviously there was no internet back then, so that's one thing, but with, like you said, network subscriptions, YouTube, other websites, there's no reason. Even Twitter, even social media, you can watch matches now. It's amazing. There is no excuse to not check out certain promotions. Unless you're busy, but, again, I don't watch New Japan just because, A, I don't have a strong interest in that, in New Japan, and B, because I just don't have the time. But again, if you're a wrestling fan and you are not watching anything, you're like, oh, wrestling sucks nowadays, you're probably not looking hard enough. Because there's WWE, there's AEW, there's Impact, Ring of Honor, there was Lucha. I mean, I don't know where they have the episodes now because they took it off Netflix, but there was Lucha. Obviously, there's New Japan. MLW is another one. Evolve had that great show on the network about a week and a half ago. There's so many companies out there right now. NXT, NXT UK, 205 Live. If Raw and SmackDown aren't tickling your fancy, there's those shows as well. There's so much great wrestling, and you're really missing out if you don't check out at least one of them, if not multiple. So yeah, it's an amazing time to be a fan right now. If one company's not doing it for you, then hopefully this other company will. And the cool thing is that if you like all kinds of wrestling and you don't hate wrestling, there's very few companies I would look at and be like, I'm not watching their shit. Like, New Japan might be the only major company I'm not watching week to week. It's just because I don't have any time. That's it. It's not because it doesn't, I hate it or something like that. Like WWE, for as frustrating as they can be, I still enjoy watching it every single week, by and large. NXT usually, but definitely Raw and SmackDown still to an extent. There's AEW. There's a lot of great wrestling there. Ring of Honor still has a lot of great competitors on their roster. Impact too. MLW might be the most underrated show out there currently. And they put out all their shows, I think, on YouTube on Mondays. So again, there's a lot of great wrestling out there. And again, if you're one of those people who are like, oh, wrestling sucks now, WWE sucks, I want to stop watching, then I think you're not looking hard enough. If you're really a wrestling fan, I would say, if you're a WWE fan and the WWE product isn't doing it for you anymore and you stop watching altogether, that's one thing. But you can't call yourself a wrestling fan and then say, oh, WWE sucks, I'm done watching wrestling, but then not watch other promotions because they're easily accessible, more accessible now than ever before. So if you're not going out of your way, not even going out of your way, they're right there. They're on YouTube. They're on, these free networks sometimes. Then you're probably the problem. At Lex the Giacomo, the amazing, the beautiful Alexis, who I miss very much, so shout out to you, Alexis. But her question was, as far as NXT Superstars go, who do you think is the future of both shows? That's a good question. I think Adam Cole from NXT would be a great fit on Raw. Again, I don't want to see any of these people called out, to be honest with you. At least not right now. Just because the main roster product is so fucking bad that I have no desire to see any of these people get called up at any point in the foreseeable future. But if we had to choose from NXT, I think Cole could be the future of Raw. I really do. With Cole as the future of Raw, and then Matt Riddle as the future of SmackDown. I just feel like Matt Riddle's a SmackDown guy. I think Matt Riddle might be a big Paul Heyman guy, so he may be better off on Raw. But I think I've seen a picture of Matt Riddle with Eric Bischoff too, so Eric Bischoff, I'm sure, would treat Matt Riddle right. Matt Riddle, SmackDown. What was I going to say? Matt Riddle, SmackDown, Adam Cole, Raw, and then between like Gargano and Ciampa, I think Ciampa would be a better fit on Raw. If these guys get called up, and I'm sure at some point they will, if they're even utilized right is the real question. But I think Gargano could be a great heel, or rather a great babyface on SmackDown, and Ciampa can be a great heel on Raw. So that's who I see being the future of both brands. From like the women's, in the ring, like for the women on both brands, who could I see being the future on both shows? Shayna Baszler on Raw, 120%. Shayna Baszler should absolutely go to Raw. And then Candice would probably have to go to SmackDown with Johnny Gargano. So Candice could go to SmackDown with her. I think she could be a breakout babyface if they use her right. Io Shirai, I would keep her separate from Kairi Sane. So I would put Io on Raw. And then who else do they have? Mia Yim. She'd probably be a good fit on SmackDown. So yeah, that's what I would like to see from the women and men of NXT on both brands. At E138 from Twitter, will Shane McMahon follow in his father's footsteps and become WWE Champion on an episode of SmackDown? Again, I'm recording this on the Sunday of Extreme Rules. So by this point, it may have already happened. And if so, we can all burn the world down together, because that is something I absolutely never in my life want to say. Hopefully, neither do you. But by this point, you may be listening to the show. Shane McMahon may already be WWE Champion, and the world may already be over. But if it's not, and it hasn't happened yet, and it still could, that is nothing I would like to say. Hopefully, that thought never crosses the minds of the people who make these matches and stuff happen. Not to say that it won't happen, because it very well could. Vince McMahon put the WWE Champion on himself, like he said, on an episode of SmackDown 10 years ago, 20 years ago. He put the ECW title on himself a dozen years ago. So anything is possible, people. Anything is possible. But let's hope it never comes to that. At E138's second question, is 205 Live only live because WWE doesn't want to change the name? I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, could you really? I guess you could. Would anyone really care if they taped it before SmackDown and called it 205 Live still? I don't think anyone would give a shit. Who cares? As long as the show is good, who gives a shit? I don't think it's only live because they don't want to change the name. I don't think they want to go through the hassle of taping it at Full Sail, for whatever reason. It reminds me a lot of the original NXT, which sucked, but they had it taped after SmackDown, I think. Like a lot like ECW, they would tape it before or after SmackDown on Tuesdays, and they would air it after... Not air. They wouldn't air it after. Actually, did they? No, they would tape SmackDown and then they would air NXT. I don't know, something like that. But the crowds could not give two shits, is what I'm saying. What I'm getting at here is that the crowd could not care less about NXT when it was taped before or after SmackDown on Tuesday nights. When they finally moved it to Full Sail in 2012, it was like a show reborn. It was so much better than it was. So hopefully the same thing can happen at 205 Live at some point, because the show is great, but it's not benefiting from being taped in front of these crowds. But no, I don't think the only reason why it's still live is because WWE doesn't want to change the name. They can't. I mean, I'm sure they are lazy, but they can't be that lazy, right? Anyway, their next question: will Mike Kanellis ever be able to earn his wife's love back? That's the ever-asked question right now, isn't it? I hope so. I like Mike Kanellis. I don't want to see them get divorced. I don't want to see Maria Kanellis be a single mom. So fingers crossed that does not happen. But through the power of love, I think anything is possible. I do think anything is possible. And I do think Mike Kanellis will at some point rekindle his love with Maria. And they will be the power couple of WWE again. Or at least something close to that. At Frank Mill Show from Twitter. Who is the next call-up from NXT? I mean, technically the Street Profits, I wouldn't say they're officially called up already. I mean, they're appearing on Raw, but are they officially called up? I wouldn't say so. Though I do think they will be after TakeOver Toronto. I do think we are headed to a Street Profits Undisputed Era NXT Tag Team title match, which has not already been announced by the time I'm recording this, which is why I'm saying it now. And I think Undisputed Era win, and Roddy wins the NXT North American title. The Undisputed Era wins all the gold by the end of that takeover, and the Street Profits move up to the main roster, because they're already appearing on Raw anyway. So if not the Street Profits, if you already technically say, okay, they're on Raw already, if not them, then Shayna Baszler. I could see her dropping the title in Toronto to Mia Yim. I think it's Mia Yim. I don't know why I say Maya. It's Mia Yim. And then Baszler goes up to either Raw or SmackDown to start a feud with Becky Lynch, hopefully over the Raw Women's Championship. So I could see that happening. Baszler would probably be my pick. A close number 2 would be Johnny Gargano. As badly as I do not want to see him on the main roster, just because I know they would mess him up, I could see him getting called up after he likely loses to Adam Cole in Toronto at TakeOver. So I could see Gargano also getting called up after SummerSlam weekend, probably to SmackDown if I had to take a guess. I mean, if the wild card role is still a thing by that point, I guess it doesn't matter what show. But of the two, like I said earlier, I think Gargano would be a better fit on SmackDown. And Frank's second question, what female wrestler gets the next push? Frank and I talked a lot about this on his show a few weeks ago. It went up on the weekend of Extreme Rules. If you want to check it out, we talked a lot about Shayna and how high he is on her. And I am too. I think Shayna's really, really good. If it's not Shayna getting called up and getting an immediate push towards the Raw Women's title, I mean, there's a few people I would love to see pushed. Like, I would love to see Ember Moon get a big push on SmackDown. I don't see that happening. Ruby Riott, I think she's still hurt. More likely, I think Mandy Rose gets the next push of the women, and then she gets a shot at the SmackDown Women's Championship, probably at some point down the road, and we could see Mandy Rose probably versus Bayley. If Bayley escaped with her title intact from Extreme Rules, which I had my doubts whether she would or not, my pick was that she wouldn't. I don't think she will. Again, this is being recorded 10 days ago, so by this point you're probably wondering, why is he still talking about Extreme Rules? But my guess is that we see Bayley and Mandy Rose for the SmackDown Women's title at some point in the near future. And I think it could be a good feud. So Mandy Rose, I mean, they were already starting to push her anyway with wins over Ember Moon and Carmella. So I think she's the next woman of anyone on Raw or SmackDown that gets the next big push. I don't know if she wins the title necessarily, but I do think she's getting the next big push out of all the women currently on Raw and SmackDown. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, his question was, thoughts on one of these possible tag teams? So he included 2 pictures, one of Elias with Sami Zayn at a house show, and one with Elias with Matt Hardy at a house show. Neither tag team really interests me at all, to be honest with you. I would prefer Elias do his own thing, but even if he does have a tag team, like the Drew McIntyre tag team does nothing for me either. But him with Sami Zayn, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't really seem like a good fit to me. I feel like Sami Zayn is a better fit on his own. So I'd rather see Sami Zayn doing his own thing than teaming up with Elias. Because I don't know what they're really doing with Sami now that his team with Kevin Owens is over. I'd rather see Elias, do his own thing, Sami Zayn do his own thing. Matt Hardy doesn't really seem like it's a good fit at all. I mean, I guess they can make it entertaining. Matt Hardy and Elias doesn't really seem like a good tag team. But again, I'd rather see both guys on TV doing their own thing than being put in a pairing together, just because, Elias and Matt Hardy doesn't really seem like it'd be a good fit. But that's just in my personal opinion. At Reborn Again, John Ritlin from the Twitter machine. Check out his YouTube show, Real Honesty with John Ritlin. Always great content. His first question was, does every wrestling promotion need to cool it with the apron spots? Because, as we know, it's the hardest part of the ring. Yeah, they do. I think that, honestly, any move. I was going to say, head first on the apron, the pile drivers, and everything else, and the Canadian destroyers, all that shit has got to stop. Because like you say, they say it all the time, it's the hardest part of the ring. Okay, we fucking get it, it's the hardest part of the ring. Then don't do it. Don't do the spots. I don't know if Owens' pop-up powerbomb, I feel like people have had to have gotten hurt from that. With the pop-up powerbomb on the apron, because it just looks brutal. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it gets a certain, point of the apron where it doesn't hurt, I don't know. But really, any move, I'm not a fan of it, because I think we've talked about this before. Maybe it was, not recently, but years ago. It might have been you, John, or someone else who asked me here on the show, we see a lot of apron spots, in every promotion. Ring of Honor, WWE. Maybe it was someone else talking about it, but I feel like we've had this conversation before. And there was this phase where everyone would do their fucking finisher on the ring apron. And it was like, dude, stop. It's not special anymore. So stop doing it. Not just WWE, but Ring of Honor, AEW, Impact, whatever. Just stop. Because I don't know if it's safe. I'm not exactly sure. But when Darby Allin did it at Fyter Fest, that just looked dumb. That just looked fucking stupid. If it's a pop-up powerbomb and it's not hurting anyone, whatever. I'm not sure if Darby Allin was hurt at all, but that shit it won't help his back at all. I'll say that much. Won't help his back in the slightest. Taking swanton bombs on the fucking ring apron. I just think that's dumb. And you move a little bit, you don't get it exactly the way that you want it to, and you miss, and you're fucked. So I do think that they should cool it with the apron spots. Maybe once in a while they'll mean something. They're not as oh god, they should never do this, the chair shots to the head. I'm not a fan of that at all. But the apron spots, I don't hate too much. I just hate the fact they do them so often. So like you said, they got to cool it with the ring apron spots like you said. His next question, be honest, when Batista first started doing movies, did you think he would end up being as successful as he is now? Absolutely not. Definitely not. I first thought he had potential when I saw Guardians. A lot like all of you, this is no revelation here. But I thought when I first saw Guardians that he had a lot of potential to not be a great Drax only, but great in any role that they put him in, not just a henchman in 007, but the movies I've seen him in from, Hotel Artemis, the Avengers movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and most recently Stuber. I thought he was very good in that movie. Every Batista movie that I've seen in the last couple of years, he's always been very entertaining. 007, I thought he was great in that too. And I'm a big 007 guy. All the recent movies I've loved to death. So, no, I did not think he would be successful. Not to say, he's going to fail, but a lot of people think, I'm going to be the next Rock, and no one ever is. I don't think The Rock thought he would be the first Rock. So, the fact that Batista, not that he's as well-known or successful or as even John Cena at this point, I think he's a better actor than John Cena, and he's getting in bigger movies than John Cena. But I don't think when Batista started out, people thought he would be the next Cena or The Rock on the silver screen. But he is. And he's doing really well for himself, which is great to see. I thought Stuber, I said this last week, I saw it the Friday that it came out about 2 weeks ago at this point. I thought it was really funny, and I will recommend it to anyone. Just a great, maybe not family friendly, it's rated R and they say fuck a lot, but I just thought it was really entertaining. So definitely go check it out if you haven't already. He's a great, well-rounded actor in whatever role they put him in, but no, to be honest with you, I did not think he would be as big as he is now. John's next question, what are your thoughts on Jim Cornette? Good, bad, indifferent? I'm a big Jim Cornette guy, not just because obviously he's a legend within the wrestling world and all that he's accomplished in wrestling and beyond. I just think he's really entertaining. He does take it a little far sometimes. I'm not the biggest Cornette fan with some of the shit that he says. I feel like sometimes he gets a little too controversial for the sake of being controversial, or he just, runs off of the mouth more than he should sometimes. And two, sometimes he rants about Vince Russo. Trust me, the Vince Russo rants can be hilarious, but when that's all I hear about, every fucking podcast I hear him in, it gets a little okay, dude, talk about something else. You're a little bitter at this point. But by and large, I'm a big Cornette guy. I think he has a great mind for the business. He's obviously a legend. He usually knows what he's talking about. And he's a great speaker, and he's just very entertaining. So yeah, I'm a big Cornette guy. I would say I'm more of a Cornette fan than I am a Cornette hater. He can cool it with Vince Russo, hate rather. I mean, Vince Russo's a fucking clown, but I mean, at the same time, I don't need to hear that he's a clown every 10 seconds. I just feel like it got old a long time ago. So once in a while, it's entertaining. But, you know, by and large, I listen to his stuff. I listen to his podcast, his 2 cents on whatever wrestling show I just watched. And he's usually on point. And he usually, you know, calls a spade, and whenever he sees bullshit, he lets that person know about it. So, yeah, I'm a Cornette guy, too. The last question of the day, also from John at Reborn Again. His last question was, what are your thoughts on intergender wrestling? I'm personally 50-50 on it at best. I completely agree. I'm not a big intergender guy. And I've said this before. I think I talked about it on Wrestle Rant Radio about 2 weeks ago when I was reviewing Impact. I thought they made it work with Tessa and Sammy at Slammiversary. I thought that was a really good match. Lucha kind of pushed it a little much. I wasn't a big intergender guy in Lucha Underground. Like when they did Sexy Star, and I've said this before, Sexy Star versus Pentagon. Give me a fucking break. Pentagon would break her arm in 10 seconds. She actually beat Pentagon at one point. Like, that's not realistic. I just thought that was corny and stupid and dumb. When they did it right, like the trios tag team matches with a woman on each team, or like when Ivelisse was in there, she was believable. You know, like she put up a good fight against like Matanza one time before getting crushed. Like, that makes sense for the most part. So I didn't really mind it in Lucha. I'm not a big fan when other promotions do it. WWE doesn't really do it at all anyway. Impact, you know, when they did Tessa versus Joey Ryan, who cares? You know, Eli Drake, one of the reasons that he was fired from Impact was because he said, listen, I'm not doing this shit. Tessa's great, but I'm not facing Tessa on a show. I just think that's stupid. And, you know, that was part of the reason why they fired him. And I don't blame him at all. I mean, Joey Ryan, it made more sense for Tessa to face him because he's a joke. And I don't know. I mean, I guess they made the Sammy Tessa thing work, so they probably could have made the Eli Drake Tessa thing work too. But I don't blame the guy, because usually it's not a knock against women, but it's just not, it's really not something that's either entertaining or engaging, or most times realistic. Sammy's not a big guy. He's really not. He's a bit on the chubby side. He's a great wrestler. He's not the fucking, you know, he's not Braun Strowman. I think that would be stupid. I really do. Like Braun Strowman and Tessa Blanchard. There's no chance that Tessa would have a shot in hell of winning. At all. But, you know, with Sammy and Tessa, it kind of made sense, and the story was strong enough where I kind of excused it. So, the circumstances really have to be right in order for me to enjoy intergender wrestling. Impact did a decent job of it with the Sammy Tessa stuff. Lucha usually did a good job of it, but it's not something I want to see like all the time. Joey Ryan, that's like all he has is intergender matches. I honestly, that's not really entertaining to me. I'm not saying it's bad or that you're a bad person if you like it, but for me, I just think it's kind of stupid. Joey Ryan, I guess it makes sense because the guy's an idiotic wrestler anyway, and most of his in-ring arsenal is just dumb shit involving his penis. Like, you can't get much lower than that. That's probably a big reason why he didn't go to AEW or WWE, because he probably knew, okay, my style will not work in either promotion because they won't allow it on their television shows. I might as well stay right where I'm at on the independent scene. And he's a smart guy for doing that, because I'm glad he didn't go to either promotion. I'm not a big Joey Ryan guy. Maybe on BTE, but when the bell rings, I really don't give a shit about the guy. But anyway, you're talking about intergender wrestling. The circumstances have to be right in order for me to enjoy it. But by and large, I agree. I'm very, I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm very 50-50 as you are. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 295 of #AskGSM here today. Thank you guys once again for your cooperation with the show and the time that I've been away for. It was great of all you guys to send in your questions on the Saturday and Sunday of Extreme Rules weekend, 10 days ago at this point, 10, 11 days ago, for me to film both these shows last week and this week before I went away. So again, guys, really appreciate that. I hate taking weeks off from either, #WrestleRant Radio, really whatever I do. I try to do it as soon as possible or ahead of time so I don't have to worry about it when I get back. Like when I get back this weekend, it's, the 24th as this goes up. When I come back this weekend, I don't want to sit down and record 2 episodes of the show. As much as I love doing it, it can be a lot sometimes, and close to an hour of my time. 2 hours if you film, 2 shows back to back. But this is clocking in at around 24, 25 minutes. One of the shorter shows in recent memory, just because I do got to get going. I got to get other stuff done before I take off tomorrow. But this is going up the 24th, so hopefully you guys had a great week. We'll continue to have a great week. And if you want to send in questions for next week's show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine, at WrestleRam with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave your question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include it in next week's edition. With all that being said, guys, be sure to once again like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.